Well, welcome to the program. So good to have you. Happy holidays. We're talking kind of at the end of the Thanksgiving holiday. I hope you and yours are well, and I hope the upcoming holidays are just wonderful for you, Stephen.
Thank you, Paul. I'm really glad to be with you today.
I'm excited to talk about this subject. I think we all need a little joy in our lives, and you've written this wonderful new book, The Joy You Make. I want to get into that, absolutely. But let's start at the start. Maybe tell our audience a little bit, just briefly, about what you're going to be sharing with us when you present to Smithsonian Associates. We'll have links so that our audience can find out more. But maybe just tell us what you're going to say, how you're going to say it, and how you're going to use Zoom
Yeah.
to kind of keep us engaged.
So this is either the third or the fourth presentation I've done with Smithsonian Associates, but it's the first that's going to be virtual. The others have been in the actual, I guess, the basement of a castle. I'm not really sure, but
Yeah.
certainly basement. And I'm excited that we're going to be able to use Zoom for this because I think we'll have a larger reach as a result. And by we, I'm not using the royal we. I'm going to be in conversation with my friend and fellow author Todd Dowdy, who is the author of Little Pieces of Hope. And I think we're going to have an exciting conversation about how to find joy, especially in some of these more challenging times. Whether we're talking about aftermath of the election, fears about climate change, or just the holiday season. It's a tough time for many people this month of December. So yeah, we're going to have an engaging conversation. I know there's going to be room for questions, and to the best of my knowledge, it's on Thursday, December 12th,
Yeah.
uh, around 6 p.m., but not exactly 6 p.m. I'll let you, maybe you know.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It is going to be from 6:45 to 8 o'clock, and Thursday evening there at the Smithsonian, right downtown DC, and available on Zoom everywhere.
hmm Yes, and so it's going to be yeah. So where should we begin? It's
Well, why don't we start talking about the book then, too, Stephen? Because I think we all are in need of some uplift during these times. And this particular month, the holidays in general, can be challenging for so many. What inspired you about writing this? Because I know you've had some personal challenges. We all have them, and you've been pretty candid about all of that. But what inspired you really to do this?
Well, I think that's a really important question. What inspired me to write this book? So much of what I write comes out of my personal life. And as a columnist for the Washington Post, I would say half of those pieces are me trying to figure out, some problem that I hope has resonance with others. And so, in this case, 2017 was kind of a dark year for me. My parents died, my mom in January, my dad in April, and then my husband and I separated in between those two dates. And then my sister was diagnosed with ovarian cancer later that year. It's not a good cancer. And I found it really challenging to get out of the darkness. It just kind of felt like it was settling on me. And I started reading and I started doing some activities just kind of for the hell of it. I didn't understand that I was trying to find joy early on. But as time went on, a lot of the exercises, a lot of the practices I was doing started to lead me in that direction. And I found that there was a lift that came from that. And that and then in the middle of the pandemic, and obviously by the time we're in the pandemic, many of us are challenged. We're at home. We're not in our office places. Early on, there's no vaccine, so there's a great deal of medical fear and to mask, not to mask, vaccines. So the cloud had settled, and so I published a column in January of 2022, how to find a little bit of joy in the dark, and I'll talk to you a little bit about what the substance was, but the reaction was very strong.
Hmm.
People grabbed onto that. Where is my little bit of joy, my joy hit, my snatch of joy? And I could see that they, like me, were really hungry for more joy. in their lives and in our lives. And so that's kind of how the book came to be. Um, Literally, after that column was published, my literary agent had a phone call from Maria Shriver, and she is the publisher of the Open Field imprint at Penguin Random House. I did not know that part of her resume at the time.
I didn't know that.
And she was very interested in seeing if I could turn 1,000 words into 60,000 words. So I thought about it for about a week, and I kind of uh, wrote some notes and decided the answer was yes. Part of my challenge, Paul, was though I'm not like inherently a bubbly or joyous type of person. And I was thinking at the outset, I wonder if I'm really the right person because sometimes people have called me Eeyore. I'm known to be a little bit of a curmudgeon. I could definitely be, this glass that is half empty, not half full.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, but I embarked on this and I realized I probably like the best subject because if I can find more joy and if I can share more joy, well, then just about anyone else can. And that is what happened.
Well, Stephen, you make this really interesting distinction that in my mind, certainly in hearing your answer and in reading the book and my research of you, there is this distinction between joy and happiness, and that's a crucial one to understand, that distinction. Maybe tell us kind of how, because we might not, all of us might not be bubbly. We might not have this real, kind of just bounce all the time, but
Mhm.
we can be joyful.
We can be joyful, and I'm really glad to talk about that. I wish I had my two props with me. I'm deficient today, but I'll describe them um, because happiness is an emotion that is usually externally driven. So you get a promotion. I'm happy. You win an Emmy for your podcast. You're happy. I'm happy too. Your wife is happy and your new dog, but
Right. Good
especially the
hearing.
new dog because
Yeah.
there could be more treats.
Oh, yeah.
Uh, but it's a very externally driven emotion that is also short-lived. You sort of get that bounce, that hit, and then and I sort of make the analogy, it's like eating a Twinkie. I wish I had that hit with me because when you eat a Twinkie, you're going to get, an amazing sugar rush. And then, 30 minutes later, you're going to just crash down because the sugar rush is over. That's happiness. Um, Joy, by contrast, is eating a hearty whole wheat muffin. And it is going to satiate you, it's going to fill you, it's going to stay with you for a much longer period of time. And what it represents is that joy is a state that lives within us. It does not have to be activated from the outside. Sometimes we have to go searching for it in ourselves, and the book is about 30 different ways that we can do that. But it lives within us. And so the reason the book is called The Joy You Make, that is really giving us agency to find, cultivate, and tap into that joy. So that's one really crucial distinction between happiness and joy. And then the other is related, but it's happiness is usually just about me. Joy is usually about you and me or the we. And so based on the literature and the research that I read, I have another food analogy, which is if I eat a delicious brownie, Paul, all by myself, I'm going to love that, and it's going to make me happy and fatter. Um, if I bake a pan of brownies and I share them with a group of people, that is a whole different set of feelings. And that is creating a little bit of a community that is me giving to someone or vice versa. And that is a much more joyful type of moment, that communion and connection with others.
I really do think we need one another. I think the the joy that comes from the holidays is that connection with others. It can produce anxiety, maybe some bad vibes at times, but that connection is certainly what drives me. In your research for the book, what particular story? I mean, we'll talk about Julie in just a moment. You mentioned your sister Julie and her battle with cancer. But aside from Julie, what struck you as being a real memorable experience? that you came across with regard to the subject of joy, and how did that shape you in kind of writing the book?
Yeah. A couple of different things come to mind, but I think one thing that I want to note, especially for the Smithsonian audience, is that this book is comprised of a lot of interviews that I did with research scholars, with psychologists, psychiatrists, sociologists, ethicists. There's a lot of research, there's a lot of science in this book, and there's actually a lot of science about joy these days, which comes as a surprise to people. Um, there is my own narrative, so this part of this is memoir, and then part of it is interviewing, talking to other people about their stories. Um, one of the first activities that I did, and this was a little bit before I had a plan, I started taking pictures during the pandemic, photographs. And I have an old iPhone that people make fun of me for because I can hold it in my hand, in one little hand. And then I was posting these pictures of, they were pretty things, sunrises and moonrises and flowers, and people were liking them. And I was liking that they were liking them. I mean, I would get the likes and I would get a little dopamine hit, and we're off to the races.
Yeah.
I was using the hashtags joy, joyful, and beauty is everywhere. And then I started noticing that other people, some of whom I knew, but most whom I did not, were posting their own photographs and using the same hashtags. And at that moment, I felt like we were speaking to each other. We were starting this conversation around joy and around beauty. And that was so much more gratifying. And that was really the first time it really, I felt it in my body how important connection is to joy. And at the same time, it kind of helped me lean into the notion of gratitude. And really, gratitude and connection are the foundational pillars of joy. And so I was grateful for what I was seeing, and to be grateful, you have to be in relationship with someone. And so that little photography exercise, which I continue to do to today, really opened my eyes.
Our guest is Steven Petrow, who's written the wonderful new book, The Joy You Make. Stephen mentioned Maria Shriver. She has said about the book, I love this quote. Petra shows us all how to make joy our life's companion, no matter our circumstances. That's really wonderful. And so I want to talk to you for just a second about your sister Julie, because her resilience, her capacity for joy is such a powerful element. I could tell in your life, and certainly represented in the book. Tell us about some of the lessons that you think might be just relevant for our Smithsonian audience, particularly those of us who are over the age of 60, who were looking for this difference between just, you know, happiness and what joy can bring, and this needed connection that we've got to have with one another.
Well, Paul, thank you for asking me about Julie. I'm going to take a deep breath here. So, as I mentioned, she was diagnosed with ovarian cancer in November of 2017, and she died from that cancer last year in June, which was about 5.5 years. And much of my life during that time was being Julie's brother and being Julie's advocate. Um, And she helped me to see, and she helped our whole family to see, that even having what is usually a terminal diagnosis, we were able to go much deeper in our individual and our family relationships. We learned how to be present for each other, both in the hospital when she was having procedures, over the holidays, and then at the end, our whole family was there when she did die. And she embodied this joy. She must have been eating whole wheat muffins her whole life. Yeah, she was born with this big smile on her face, and even in the last picture we have as a family, which is the day before she died, she has that smile. And I'll just tell you, I guess people wonder, well, how can you hold joy and grief and sadness at the same time? And it sounds like it's counterintuitive. Curiously, researchers say joy is about the only emotion that can sort of cohabitate with other emotions. You really can't be happy and be sorrowful. So her birthday, which was 3 months before she died, was her 61st birthday. And she wanted to have a big birthday party. And at the same time, she'd stopped treatment. So she also knew this was going to be a goodbye party of sorts. And we held those two parties. We had two different chocolate cakes. There were two sets of emotions among our family and close friends, supporting her, supporting each other. And you would be crying one minute and then you'd be laughing the next, and you could kind of just feel how you are a whole person through this. And that is, that was a gift that she gave to us. And one other thing that I learned about joy early on was I thought joy was what happens on New Year's Eve or July 4th or your wedding. It's kind of the Big Bang theory of joy. And many of us are confused about that. I was too at the beginning. That is one kind of joy, and that is what the scholars call ecstatic joy. And but there's serene joy, there's religious joy, there's spiritual joy, there's Schadenfreude, which is the joy we take when someone messes up or whatever that is. It is a joy. It's not one that I particularly endorse, but I think what you see is there are many different kinds of joy. And also, so once we start to understand this sort of collection of different joys, it's much easier to realize them in your day-to-day life. We're not, every day can't be New Year's Eve, thank God in its own way, but that's not how life works. And so partly that photography exercise was finding the small joy that day. And and they do happen every day.
You talk about some ingredients that kind of bring this all together very much in almost a recipe form, and we've talked about connection, but you also make mention of gratitude and kindness. And I wonder if as we're going through some difficult times and as we kind of look forward into the month of December, what's the easily accessible trait that we can just grab onto first? Is it connection, or can we be kind to one another? Should we be doing all three of these things? Should we be expressing gratitude for everything that we've got? What's the simplest way to kind of approach this quickly?
Well, what you just suggested exhausted me. So I'm not going to suggest people try 5 things at once
Sorry.
in December. No, in December, when they're worrying about holiday gifts and maybe
Yeah.
parties, not holiday gifts and not parties. There's so much loneliness overall,
Yeah.
in our country at this time. The Surgeon General has talked about this epidemic of
Yeah.
loneliness.
Yeah. Definitely.
I think I'm going to talk about a couple here, and the one that resonates most easily to an individual, I say, do that one.
Hmm.
And and so gratitude has suddenly become like so current, and everybody's talking about gratitude. And in a way, like I'm over gratitude because it seems played out, but I'm not really, because as I said earlier, having a sense of gratitude makes you reflect on what's good in your life. And the science says if you keep a gratitude journal for 21 days, which is 3 weeks, and what they suggest is that before you go to bed, you write down 3 things that you're grateful for. And I tell you, before I did it, I was skeptical. I was the Eeyore, and I was like, really? And then I decided I was going to do it, Paul. And then I thought, well, I'm not going to have anything to be grateful for. I'm going to be like the biggest loser here. Um, but I did jump in, and I jumped in with, earnestly, and it was kind of amazing. I did not have, I solved the problem of climate change, on day one. I had,
Good.
you know, I, I had friends over for dinner. I did various activities with people. I helped my sister with something. We played a board game. We went hiking. I read a wonderful book. I talked about a wonderful book. All of these were sort of the small things that make up what we're grateful for. And so over those 21 days, I found that I was starting to wake up on the right side of the bed rather than the wrong side. And I think previously I was going to bed and I would be like, I wasn't writing it down, Paul, but I would be like listing my grievances for the day. You know, so and so did me wrong. You know, this didn't go well. And then you go to sleep and you kind of have that tape going in your head. It's not helpful. And then you wake up still on that side of the bed. And so it is something that I suggest that people try. You don't even need to get any kind of journal. You can just write on scraps of paper and put them in a mason jar or something, and then look back at them at another time. But taking this moment to create a space where you're trying to be open to what is good in your life will make a fundamental difference. And some of the other things that I suggest really kind of play off of that. I talk about board games and the whole notion of playing to be with people, not to win. And that was, I'll tell you, I grew up playing the game of Risk, which you may have as well, but that's about world
Mm.
domination. It's a very boy game.
Yeah.
And that's about winning. And so this notion of playing for the experience, playing to be with others, it's wonderful and it's fun. And it also kind of takes me to another theme, which is as we get older, we begin to protect ourselves. The world is a scary place. And if anyone has like a photograph of themselves as a baby, I suggest taking that out and looking at it and then think, well, how do you look now? And how have you come to protect yourself so that you don't get hurt in this world? Um, Playing games, doing activities with others, dancing, we start to take off those layers and we allow ourselves to be seen by others. And then that would allow you to see into me. And
Mhm.
there's something truly jubilant about that. Um, it is a matter of becoming vulnerable, which is a scary thing. I acknowledge that. And that was one of the hardest pieces of this for me. How can I become open and vulnerable without being overwhelmed? But I saw slowly that it paid off because others did the same. And then we're getting back to that kind of connection.
Smithsonian Associate Steven Petrow has been our guest today. Steven, the book, The Joy You Make, is wonderful. Thanks so much for all of your hard work. Congratulations on this book. I think selfishly, I'd love to have you back. I could talk to you about this subject for a long time. I think our audience needs to hear this. Maybe leave us with one or two quick tips, actionable steps that we can take in between, kind of today and when we see you next at Smithsonian. Make us joyful.
That's next week. Well,
Yeah, yeah.
um, one thing I also came to see was sometimes joy is not right here in our view. It's inside of us and it's in our memories. And so think about how you can reach back in time. And I talk in the book about maybe you've saved letters and the handwriting of that person. Maybe you can make a recipe or two that someone in your family made. I am, one of the things I do, Julie made this ring for me from some earrings that she had before she died, and she passed it on
Oh,
to me. These little sapphires I remember in her ears, and that takes me
lovely.
back to a joy in the past. So
That's lovely.
there's anticipatory joy, there's the joy of memory, and there's the joy of the right here and now. And I really appreciate you, Paul, and thank you for this wonderful interview.
Well, thank you, Stephen. So nice to meet you. So nice to talk to you about the joy you make. We will have links so that our audience can find out more about Stephen, more about his new book, The Joy You Make, and more information about his upcoming Smithsonian Associates presentation. Happy holidays to you, Stephen. My best to you. Congratulations on all of this work. And please come back and talk to us again.
Absolutely, and happy holidays to you, your wife, and your puppy.
Our puppy. Thank you. Well,
Good
I'll let
one.
you go and you can go rescue your dog and all will be right with the world. But thank you so much, Stephen. Have a great rest of your day.